Hello, this is Dale Matthews with Inside News, and joining me today is Mike Jones, Mary Middleton, and also Michelle Smith. Hello to everybody. Welcome to our show.
Good afternoon, Dale.
Hi,
hello, Mary. Hi. So we're going to be talking about the GMO decision that was made by Judge Wolke recently, and you have to say his name like that too. But first, we're going to be talking, we will do this at the beginning of each of our shows for a little while, like we did, in the same way that we did with the comments that preceded each of our previous broadcasts when we were talking about people who were involved in the candidates forums. And this evening we have Michelle Smith with us, who has some valuable insights, according to her. This better be really fascinating, Michelle, about what she thinks about the election that just took place, about what's going to happen next. What does this all mean, Michelle Smith?
Wow, I don't know. Well, I hope these will be valuable. I don't know, Dale.
Did you call somebody at random out of the phone book, Dale?
On forever. And I would have to start off by saying, you know, this is really my first experience being this close to an election, having, you know, someone running for position, namely my husband. So, you know, I'm seeing it as the first time from that perspective, and it was quite a bit of a learning experience. You know, you don't really know totally what to expect going into it. You know, as you know, we homeschool the kids through an online program, Connections Academy, and incidentally, the election just happened to coincide with lessons the children are having in grade school on politics. So that was kind of interesting. We have to have a few little learning lessons on that, you know, teachable moments and such things, and so that was interesting as well. You know, I'm not really sure what you're looking for, Dale, as far as commentary on it. You know, if you have specific questions, I guess you could jump in.
Well, you know what happened in the election. What do you think about that? What is the electorate trying to tell us?
Right. What we noticed from the percentages there, I guess we're looking at it. You know, obviously.
Ooh, it must not be quite so obvious, Mike. We seem to have been cut off from her somehow. Yeah. I don't know why. Well, extrapolating from what she said, it does have something to do with math and classes that children take, and so we've learned lessons from children. And when things add up for an election, you simply have to pass the test, and some of us passed and others failed. Mike?
I guess.
Yes.
I'm not greatly articulate on this here today. I'm sort of spent from the whole primary process.
Oh, come on now. Okay. So over my shoulder, we'll get back to Michelle. You guys already know this show and the kind of things that can happen. So she was accidentally cut off. May have pressed a button with her self. Okay, so over my shoulder is a little bit of a graphic about GMO, genetically modified organisms, and we're going to start out. Mary Middleton is somebody that's important in this movement, and she's got a bunch of things to say. She won't be cut off to the best of our ability, but first we're going to add on a commentary from KDRV TV, who will try to sort of summarize what just recently happened, and then Mary will take us back to the beginning and roll forward. Here's what KDRV had to say.
2 years ago, back in the May 2014 elections. Now, that decision has been overturned, and while some people say that it's a good thing for some farmers, like the one here near Williams, says that it could be devastating to their crops.
It's just frustrating. It's enough work to be farming, let alone be having to spend time fighting for protecting the integrity of the product that we provide.
Don Tipping owns 7 Seeds Farm, a non-GMO operation near Williams.
We grow about 150 different crops for seed every season.
His business also extends online, selling GMO-free seeds grown in a known GMO-free county. He says he has buyers all over the country, But the judge's decision could change that.
It brings the integrity of our products into, they're threatened from crossing because people don't want seeds that are contaminated by GMOs.
The concern is not with his crops, but others in the county that are genetically modified. He says through cross-pollination and contamination on neighboring properties, his crops may suffer.
58.2% of the voters support having a GMO-free zone here. Clearly, that is a strong majority.
Mary Middleton was the chief petitioner for the ban and says the judge's decision is just a minor setback for reaching their goal.
Certainly, today's ruling was disappointing, but we have not lost heart, and our resolve is still the same.
But while supporters of the measure are getting ready to fight back, some organizations say this decision was the right one, protecting other farmers in the county.
We're very excited about the decision. The decision ensures that farmers will not have to destroy any crops that they have in the ground and have their own choices on what to raise in the future.
Supporters of the GMO ban say they plan to meet this week to evaluate all of their options moving forward. Near Williams, Casey Kirshner, Newswatch 12.
Well, let's hit this controversy right on the head. This fellow says that he's selling 7 seeds, but it's obvious from his commentary he's selling many more than 7. Mary, do you wish to comment? Okay. Mary, take us back to the beginning. Explain to us, please, GMO, without getting into the relative merits of GMO versus non-GMO. What does it mean? How did we get to this spot? And then we'll go on to what's next.
Sure. So GMO stands for genetically modified organism. There's an echo.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're getting
what that means is that this is an organism that's been created in a lab. So they've taken the DNA from corn and soy and many other crops, and they have infused it with the DNA from some other organism. And so these are not things that occur naturally. We are not talking about hybridization. We are talking about things that are created in a lab. And with that process, they've also, these biotech companies that create these genetically modified organisms are allowed to then patent that. So they patent those seeds, and so lots of people get confused about, well, am I planting GMOs? Not unless you have a contract with Syngenta or Monsanto or Bayer or DuPont or any of those 7 major companies that are creating these seeds. The problem is that when the farmers do that contract with these companies and put them into the ground, the crops grow, pollen is created as a result of these crops growing, and pollen drifts. Pollen goes with the wind. Pollen is sometimes on the wings of the butterfly, and there's many other things that are associated. Dr. Ray Seidler from Jackson County, a retired EPA scientist, was one of the scientists in a paper along with David Bronner that proved that in fact, more pesticides are used as a result of the past 20 years of genetically modified organisms and this mono-agriculture that we created here in the United States. Most of the companies are what used to be the largest biotech company was Monsanto. Monsanto's not #1 anymore because I believe it was Bayer and DuPont merged, and they became larger at that point, and China Chem bought Syngenta. So Syngenta is the largest biotech company in the world, and in fact, that is the company that's known to be here in the row. Most of what started back in 2012 when Chris Hardy, who's a local farmer in Jackson County, was investigating, what was happening around him, what were people growing. He was going to lease some land, and he just was talking to the neighbors, and what are you guys growing over here? And he found genetically engineered sugar beets. Well, he was a member of the Southern Oregon Seed Growers Association, and they had a pinning sort of mapping thing because there was a rule on the books. It's no longer on the books, unfortunately, but there was a rule in the books that if somebody was growing genetically engineered seeds or crops, that they had to be a 4-mile radius around that crop to or around, it was a 4-mile radius maybe around organic farms. Not remembering the exact details, sorry about that. But anyway, there was a rule in place, and so the seed growers regularly sat down and did a pinning system because there's more than genetic contamination that can happen through cross-pollination. All kinds of things can cross-pollinate and then create a different crop. So they were regularly in the habit of sitting down and talking about what they were growing, what their neighbors were growing, and they had sort of a pinning system in place. So the Syngenta represents, creating these leasing with small farmers, and for the most part, they were leasing 1-acre plots, and they had a rotation system where they would plant 1/4 of an acre of sugar beet stecklings. And rotate that every 3 or 4 years. And the farmers themselves that owned that land were getting a nominal fee for that. Anyway, they were talking to them about the pinning system and trying to just get a hand they could protect against cross-pollination and cross-contamination.
Mary,
Syngenta reps.
Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 things. One is Mary occasionally is cutting out. We're not editing anything. It's just you might miss a word every once in a while. And you keep saying what sounds to me like penny system, but that's probably not it. What is it that you're saying? What kind of system?
Pinning. Pinning. So where you take a map and you put a pin in the map where the sugar beets are grown, and then draw a radius around that so that you know that contamination is probable within that radius.
Okay.
So that they were drawing these circles around different crops so that they could protect against cross-contamination and cross-pollination. Because many, many things can cross-pollinate.
Well, now let me ask you something. If I have a crop of sugar beets and no one is growing sugar beets anywhere around me, does the pollen from my sugar beets influence my neighbor's corn or something else, or does it need to be a like-kind species, or how does that work?
Yes, it needs to be a like-kind species. It's a beta crop, so any beta crop could be affected. Okay, and the seed growers in this area, because this is a premier seed growing region. I mean, seriously, seeds are not easy. It's not easy to be. You're planting a crop and waiting for it to go to seed. Sometimes that takes 2 years.
Wow.
So, yeah. The fact that we've got this unique bioregion with little pockets of just beautiful soil because of the mountainous region and the valleys and the weather that we have, this kind of banana belt region, it's ideal for that. So they were regularly in the habit of doing this pinning, and the Syngenta reps walked out of the meeting and refused to cooperate. So the farmers, rang the alarm and said, hey, this means that we're not able to protect our crops. We are vulnerable next to these genetically engineered crops. Because the thing that happens, so if you are growing sugar beet crop or what was the one? Swiss chard. So sugar beets would cross-pollinate with Swiss chard and contaminate them. If that happens, if it cross-pollinates and you're the Swiss chard seed grower, and that becomes a contaminated seed, for the most part, you're not going to be able to sell that seed because it's patented. and so you're not legally allowed to sell that seed.
You didn't plant it.
You didn't plant it. You don't own it. You no longer own your crop because it's been cross-contaminated and cross-pollinated.
That's goofy.
The problem. That's the problem. And it's not an easy solution.
Now, if you had some GMO sugar beets and next door you were growing Swiss chard and there was this contamination to the Swiss chard, does necessarily the beneficial attribute of the GMO sugar beet then get transmitted to the Swiss chard in some way? I just don't understand how can they claim that that's now their crop, or somehow they have some sort of a claim to the genetics of your chard there because of its connection to the sugar beets. I'm assuming that this quote beneficial attribute would be resistance to pesticides and herbicides and things of that nature, as it usually is. Is that correct?
Correct. And I think that that's not an easy question to answer because the jury's still out. We've been growing food since the beginning of time, right? There's been some growing on this planet, but we've only been doing GMO in this monocultural way of doing things for about 20 years. I don't know if you guys remember in 2013 when there was genetically engineered wheat discovered in Oregon. You guys remember when that happened?
Yes.
I think it was in like November of 13.
Right.
It was in northeastern Oregon.
Right.
So genetically engineered wheat has not been approved by the USDA. There's still testing that needs to be done. They released it for a little while and then they took it off the market because of poor results of some, I don't remember all the details. But there was a farmer in northeastern Oregon, and he was doing some maintenance along the edges of his property, and he was actually spraying weeds with glyphosate. Okay? And he went back the next day expecting everything to be just dead, and there was the wheat. Okay, so that's an answer there. If it was cross-contaminated wheat, that cross-pollinated, contaminated wheat that landed there and was growing there, the reason he knew it was GMO wheat was because it withstood an application of Roundup.
Now, Mary, let's change species here, and let's suppose that your neighbor has award-winning cats or dogs, and this award-winning male that's sired a bunch of highly desirable puppies comes over onto your property and impregnates your female dog. Under the law, can that person say, wait a minute, you are now growing my award-winning puppies on your property that my dog impregnated?
That's a great question, Dale, and it's an interesting analogy. I think that an attorney who specializes in animal rights might be able to, or the rights of, I don't know. An attorney would have to answer that. I would have to lean on them for that, but it's possible. It's possible. I think there's been some cases about that.
Now, speaking of
I wouldn't doubt it.
Speaking of attorneys, then, to jump ahead just a little bit, you and the supporters of an anti-GMO forces came forward and made a suggestion that Josephine County be a little different than the rest of the state. What was that suggestion? And taking it slowly now, not what just happened, but what was that suggestion? How does it match with state law? And how did you get that through?
Okay, so in the summer of 2013, we were sort of slowly writing up an initiative to ban the growth of genetically engineered crops. Again, this came about because the farmers here were vulnerable, and there were a group of citizens and farmers that came together and said, you know, we think that it's important to protect our local farmers, and we'd like to ban the growth of them because that's the only way that you can protect them from cross-pollination. And so we were sort of slowly writing that up, and in the meantime, the state legislature someone brought forth a bill, and actually the attorney, John DiLorenzo, is credited with being the author of this bill that has been dubbed Oregon's Monsanto Protection Act. And they tried to pass that in the House, and I believe it passed in the House, and then there was a big cry from the citizens of Oregon, please, don't pass this, don't pass this, don't pass this. And it was an attempt to preempt all counties from banning GMO crops or regulating genetically engineered crops at all, and it's also called the seed bill. So it did not pass in the Senate as a result of public outcry. So we went back to working on our local legislation for the county, and we were, you know, sort of slowly working on it, and then Governor Kitzhaber held a special session. And he had held a special session about these 4 pension reform bills, right? Do you guys remember those?
Yes.
I don't remember their number, but anyway, it was 4 pension reform bills, and he really wanted those to pass. And so he said, in this, it's called the Grand Bargain, he said, I want all or none, and I want all 4 of these. And part of the bargain was to tack on or stuff in SB 863. So he let it be known, all or nothing, and it passed in special session. In the meantime, we had just filed for Citizens Initiative and got our ballot title approved same day on September 30th. In that special session, again, there was a lot of public outcry, but there was so much pressure to get the pension reform passed that our legislators signed it into law, and it's Oregon Law 633.
That was very similar to what's happening over my shoulder here. This is the pension law here, and here's the things that were inserted about GMO into that law. It's not necessarily found in nature.
Right, and you know what's also interesting to know. One of our attorneys, Melissa Wishrat, told me this. All four of those pension reform laws have been turned over in the court.
Oh,
and we're stuck with this 633 that we find to be absolutely unconstitutional, unjust, and I still feel that it's inappropriately applied here in Josephine County.
So what's going to be done about that? Obviously, now your enemy is this bill, which has become a law, and how to overturn it. I'm assuming.
Absolutely, that's what we have to go up against, and like I told Dale. We're meeting the Board of Oregonians for Safe Farms and Families. We'll be meeting with our attorneys starting tonight, and Dawn Tipping as well from 17 Farm. So we'll be meeting and looking at all of our options. We are going to be talking about the appeal process and what that would entail and how we would go about that. We're going to be talking about maybe some legislative approach. We're going to be talking about all of our options.
Now, Mary, it used to be that our county legal attorney or elected attorney, Wally Hicks, was a state representative. While all this was happening, where was Wally Hicks when he was in office as state rep? Where is Carl Wilson now? And where are our other state representatives and senators like Herman Bertschiger? Where did they stand? Do you know?
You know, I'm not certain. They've been very quiet. And in fact, this was a suit against the county. It wasn't a suit against Oregonians for Safe Farms and Families or a suit against Seven Seeds Farm. But both of us, with our attorneys, intervened on behalf of the county to defend the will of the people. And it's a darn good thing, because in the courtroom, Wally Hicks was silent, as were our commissioners.
Before you go into the latest results, just a little bit, roll back just a little bit. How was this thing passed? What do you mean that it's going up against the county? What did the local citizens decide to do to get what they wanted on this? Some local citizens. What did they do?
Well, so it was on the ballot for May 2014. And so we ran that campaign. It was a group of concerned citizens and farmers from all walks of life. We had Republicans, conservatives, liberals, independents, young and old, rich and poor, all came together. And 58.2% of the voters in May 2014 said, ban GMO crops, make this a GMO-free zone. We stand up for the local family farmers, and we don't believe that should be here.
Mary,
so
what kind of money was spent?
That's
what kind of money was spent on each side, and from where did it come?
Okay, so the other side, we were up against about $500,000, and most of it came from Oregonians for Food and Shelter, and the Farm Bureau, and Monsanto, and Syngenta, and some of the big names. And on our side, Oregonians for Safe Farms and Families was the PAC at the time, and we raised $20,000. And it came in $1 at a time. It really did. Our largest contribution was $2,000, I think, or $2,500 from the Center for Food Safety. Every other dime of it, for the most part, was from right here in Josephine County. People giving $1 here, $5 there. We sold T-shirts, we sold bumper stickers. We just did whatever it took, and we came together, and the citizens agreed. It's like I always like to say, we asked the citizens of Josephine County, what do you guys want to do? And they said, ban the crops. We don't want them here. So
there was something interesting about the timing of the passage of this and the date at which it was appealed to the court. Can you tell us about that, please?
So it passed in May of 2014. The election was certified June 5th of that year. And Josephine County has an interesting, like a 90-day period where it doesn't become law for 90 days after the certification of the election. So it became law. The law started ticking September 4th, I think, or 5th of 2014, and built into the law so that farmers wouldn't have to just till under their crops was a year phase-out period to allow farmers to finish up, whatever seed they had, finish out the crop that they had. And in fact, because it took effect September of 14, they had until September 5th of 2015, so they could, overwinter something, and then it would take effect. So it became a GMO-free zone officially after the year phase-out period, September 5th, 2015, and the lawsuit happened the night before, September 4th, 2015, by Robert and Shelley White, who, by the way, it is important to notice, they didn't even show up at the courtroom either time at the motion to intervene hearing, nor at the summary judgment hearing. So I've hesitated to say anything negative about them at all because, everybody has a right to their opinion, everybody has a right to this legal process. But the fact that they were not even there is telling to me. And the fact that they're willing to go against 58.2% of the citizens, I mean, that's a strong majority. That's not barely, 51-49 strong majority of the voters. So I don't know.
Now, something has happened over the past couple of days, and you're taking action again. Judge Wolke is not one of my favorite people, and we had a bit of a run-in with him about the Grants Pass City sales tax. Don't know how you feel about that. And he made a very interesting, I think, strange ruling about that. So here you are in front of Judge Wolke, and what was his decision and what was his rationale? Do you think he had any points?
His decision, so he ruled on several legal points that, our attorneys could explain better, but basically his decision was that they had standing, to get to court, that they had the intent of growing sugar beets, and his decision was that the state law held precedence over our local law. And again, I disagree with that, and I just outright feel that preempting counties from having local control and sovereignty, I think that's very important, which is, the issue of GMOs. You've spoken about the movement happening across the nation, and, it's a really historic time right now because there's so much awareness being built, and in Vermont, that was also a citizen-led initiative to have mandatory GMO labeling. There's two different ways to look at the counter regulations of genetically engineered crops and foods. You can either go after labeling or you can go after, creating GMO-free zones like we did. And it doesn't make any sense at all to try to level. But statewide, the labeling bill passed, which is creating this this movement where some of the larger companies are just automatically saying, okay, we're just going to label for everywhere in the United States. We're not going to create a special label for Vermont. We're just going to label genetically engineered ingredients. And so it's kind of a tipping point, which is really exciting and fascinating to see. There's going to be a big celebration in Vermont on the 4th of July in Montpelier, Vermont, and we're hoping to get some local citizens to go and march in the 4th of July parade with the GMO-free Josephine County sign and represent for us. But was I answering? You asked me a question.
Just a second, Mary. Mike, you and I have sat down with Wally Hicks and had extensive discussions about the county charter. We did a 7 or 8 episode review of the county charter. After all of that review, is your opinion that the state can say, no, you're a county with a county charter, but that does not supersede state law? Or do you think that that's backwards based on your reading of the county charter?
Listen, I think it would be nice that if we were able to make our own rules. I mean, if the citizens of the county voted in majority for something, then that's the way it should be, in my book. However, the charter, unfortunately has a precedent connected with it in which they overturned a piece of what was in this charter having to do with the compensation for commissioners, which in the charter says they'll only receive $30,000. They went to court to overturn that. I don't know why, but I'm assuming because the sitting commissioners wanted more money or something. Now, you could certainly make a case that the $30,000 should be adjusted for inflation, as that verbiage was put into the charter, in the 80s or early 90s. So it is somewhat dated. However, they decided, the county here decided that they were going to go with state law because that's where they found the rationale to to overturn the $30,000 for the county commissioners. So we've got a bad precedent there, and so now we're going with this state law. Whether that was something that the judge wanted to just latch on to rationalize this decision, or whether that's something that's prudent. Judicially, I have no idea.
Well, that's one of the reasons I ran. Can talk about it now because that's over. One of the reasons I ran, saying that I'm going to take what the charter says. The people have spoken. They haven't overturned it. What's the matter? Why would anybody be running against our own local constitution? Now, Mary, it looked as if both Mike and I have looked at the judgment carefully. It looks as if the judge is basing his decision on solid legal precedent. That's what it looks like. How do you disagree with that, and where did the judge make mistakes, in your opinion?
Well, you're asking me a question that's really for an attorney to answer.
Yes.
I disagree with it because I believe in having local control. The precedent that he cited and the reasons that he used. I can't speak to that with legal authority, but as a citizen of this county, as someone who's highly invested in the outcome of this decision and what happens here, and is committed to preserving the integrity of our food supply in Josephine County and beyond. That's the thing. The Rogue Valley is a premier seed growing region, and we provide seeds, literally, for thousands and thousands of people across the nation and throughout the world. And so if these seeds become contaminated, we're losing control of our food supply. And I don't believe that we should hand that over to the biotech companies. I believe we have to preserve the integrity of our food supply. If you don't have control of your food supply, control of you. And I'm not trying to spout kind of a conspiracy theory. I just believe that strongly about that sovereignty issue.
Well,
so
and listen,
I fundamentally disagree with John.
I think that you could certainly make a case the way most most lawsuits have to have their basis in damages, and if you're creating a product that is now not marketable because it's been contaminated in some way, you have suffered an economic loss, and that's actionable. So that's certainly one angle to go at this. I think ultimately, we have to be about ripe for this situation to go after the ORS 633. Statewide seems like would be the appropriate method of going after this thing. I don't know if that's addresses finality in this particular case, but it's in terms of a long-term solution, that seems like the way to go.
Now, Mary, tell us please here at the end of the show, what do you plan to do next? You have 3.5 seconds, please.
We are committed still to protecting local farmers, and we are going to work on looking at all our options. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your show.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Thank you for being with us. It's always worth it, Mike, to check back with Mary and just say hello, because she knows about this issue, and it keeps coming back to be a cutting-edge issue once again.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you for joining us, Mike. Thank you for joining us, and me. I'm glad I'm joining us, and we'll join all of you tomorrow on another subject, and we'll probably have somebody at the beginning saying what their feeling is about the election as well. We'll do that for a little while until everybody gets completely exhausted from this subject.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming up real fast.